Welcome to NFL Daily, where we might have to make it the top 102 free agents of 2025. I am Gregg Rosenthal. I am here in Indianapolis at the Scouting Combine in a half-full convention center where everyone is setting up for the big day where it starts tomorrow. And I am joined for the first time on NFL Daily, excited to do so, with Tom Pelissero, our insider at NFL Network, alongside Ian Rappaport. What's up?
Hey, happy to be here. Glad that I get to make my debut. Great to see you live and in person. You know, it's always fun to get out of the basement studio and see people.
It is nice to do that. And yes, you are kind of the yin to Rappaport's yang. You know, I've been here at the NFL for over a decade, and I've seen the rise of Pelissero. How is everything going just with you and Rap Sheet? Because that's a tricky relationship to work out, the two of you both being insiders.
Yeah, we kind of find, along with Mike, ways that we can, be able to stave off the fights. Like if you've noticed in the past month, there's a lot of sources tell the insiders or per the insiders in the tweets. And that was a catch-all that came out of, okay, when in doubt, just say that, and we'll fight over credit later, as opposed to, how'd you leave me off? So we're trying to stave off those fights. I think it's gone pretty well so far.
You guys are killing it.
We got to get a handle at some point for that. But per the insiders, that's the backstory on that. Is it's just to keep me from strangling him.
So you are joining us on a big day in NFL Daily in the offseason, which is the day NFL.com releases my top 101 free agents, which I put a lot of work into. Which, by the way,
I said the other day during the production call for the insiders, I'm like, is Gregg's list out yet? He's like, he hasn't published it yet. I'm like, well, then what are we supposed to put on the graphics? Yeah, you're the oracle of these are the names.
Well, they're out there now, and so you can check that out on NFL.com. And I thought you will know this list and the players and the agents and the values better than anyone. So I was excited to have you on for that. I mentioned, by the way, we might have to go to 102 because I saw what PFF did. I always made it 101 because I just thought it had a snappy ring to it. Also, one more than 100. Every other site's got 100. Just shows we're working a little bit harder. And now I noticed PFF made theirs 101 too. They just didn't.
It's a straight knockoff.
So I might just have to go to 102. But we're going to do some news before we get into the 101. And I wanted to start with something you spoke about on the Rich Eisen show on Friday. It was really the first time it was out there. It was interesting because I was like, shouldn't this be like breaking news on NFL Network?
Yeah, we had that conversation in the group chat too. Listen, there are some things. I know you're getting at Matthew Stafford. So there are some things, and this is like a broader, I could do an hour on this. I won't. But there are some stories that I don't think are necessarily conducive to tweet format.
Yes.
This was one of those where we were going to talk about it on the insiders, and then the clock ran out and yada, yada. And then Rich asked me about it straight off, and I had the wrong time zone on my phone, so I was at a Pilates studio, not a dungeon, just for anybody who looked at the quality of that video. He asked me about it, and what I tried to convey was, yes, they've given permission to Matthew Stafford's agent, Jimmy Sexton, to talk to other teams. This is not we're demanding a trade, and now it was hey, go out and see. All right, because Matthew's due $27 million this year, including a $4 million bonus that's due in about a month. That was a product and part of when they redid his deal last year.
Yes.
He got a raise in 2024.
Felt like a Band-Aid last year.
But gave up his future guarantees, which made very clear this is a year-to-year type of format. So now he plays well. They took the Eagles to the limit in the playoffs. They got a young roster. Stafford's sitting there going, I'm making 27. There are literally guys who are making double that who have not accomplished what I have and are not as good a players as I am. We've got to adjust this. So there's sometimes this dance and you're negotiating in a vacuum and there's off-the-record calls. They're just like, just do it. Frankly, no one said this to me, but it's kind of like you're going to get this information anyway, so just go ahead, talk to the other teams, figure out what they'd be willing to do for a contract, which serves two purposes. One, it allows you to make progress in terms of if you are going to do a trade, you have to do the contracts. You get that out of the way.
Yes.
But it also allows the Rams to go, okay, here's what the other teams would be willing to offer. Are we willing to go there? There is a number at which I don't believe the Rams would want to go past for Matthew Stafford. From a pure football perspective, and I know you like to watch tape and like dig into football, I don't look at the other options and go, boy, Matthew Stafford would be better off going to the Giants or the Raiders. The Rams have Sean McVay. They're in a division that they just won. They do have young talent, albeit they got some transition they've got to go through. on the offensive side. Why would he want to go elsewhere? And the honest answer is you're to the later stages of your career. You want your contract to reflect the value that you bring. The Rams are trying to figure out how do we build a championship caliber team. And so they're trying to get all the answers, get all the cards on the table, and make decisions, which could come sooner than later.
This week will be really interesting. And no, I'm glad you brought it up with Rich. And
You'll
needed
appreciate
to be
these
pushed
texts
forward.
that I just looked at. I thought maybe I had an urgent Matthew Stafford text. It's no. It's my wife. Is Tegan still grounded?
Oh.
And then Tegan, am I still grounded? You're still grounded.
Dang.
What time is this going to pass?
What'd they do? What'd they do?
She thought it was funny to play a joke on me and said she was biking to Culver's with her friends, which is 2 miles away and across a very busy road.
Okay.
While I was at swim lessons with the other kid, and Dad was not pleased.
But she didn't actually do it?
We may come off when this gets appealed to the
harsh.
appeals officer in the House, my wife. It'll probably get knocked down from the month to something more palatable. Anyway, go on.
That's harsh. So Stafford, it's fascinating to me. It really does seem like it's about money, and there's always more to it. We don't need to get into that with you here. But another one of our colleagues, it's confusing how the insider gang, works, but Schrager mentioned a number, something about like $50 million, Pete Schrager for Fox and Twitter, that maybe that's what he's seeking. And if it is something that the Rams are not willing to go that high, I don't think personally he will have that hard a time finding an organization that will. I do think that would be an appropriate market for Matthew Stafford. The Giants make some sense to me on paper. The Raiders make a little sense to me on paper. Do you have any teams that you think have actually expressed interest or would make the most sense?
I'd say the Giants and the Raiders make a lot of sense for those teams. Again, does it make sense for Matthew Stafford to go into the NFC East behind an offensive line that still needs work? He's got receivers. He has some, Malik Neighbors and some young talent on the roster, but you're going to go up and compete with Philly and even Washington and Dallas.
If you have a feeling that the Rams don't really, really want you, or maybe this is all a negotiation where, okay, I'll take X amount less from the Rams to play for the Rams, but not, everything. Or there's more to it, and he just feels like the time is up.
There's by my count, there's 9 or 10 teams that are going to need a starting quarterback in this cycle. So you can go down the list. Tennessee, does that make sense? I don't really foresee them going that direction. Cleveland, I don't see it. The Giants, it does make sense. Get instant credibility. Give you a chance to not show up with a knife to a gunfight in the division to try to get him in.
I think they're a little more turnkey than other people probably.
Well, they've got
could
some really good
contend
players
for a playoff spot with Matthew Stafford. I don't think they're a bad team.
They've got pieces. I mean, Dexter Lawrence and Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy. I know nobody wants to talk about it because what Saquon did. He did run for 1,000 yards last year. They have to get some highly drafted offensive linemen playing better or playing at all. That would certainly help. There's some adjustment to do. But, okay, so the Giants would be a possibility. You keep making your way through the draft. I'm doing this off the top of my head. The Raiders are another team that needs a starting quarterback. I do think that adding a veteran, when you hire Pete Carroll, you're not going, this is going to be a 4-year build. He's got like a 3-year contract.
Yes.
So you're thinking you're trying to win. I think that makes sense for them. Go down to the bottom of the draft order. Obviously, going back to the Rams makes sense. The Vikings are going to be a really alluring place to whoever.
Woo!
I don't foresee that being how this plays out, because then you're talking about giving up assets where they don't have a lot of draft picks this year either, giving up assets to bring in a veteran quarterback when you've got J.J. McCarthy there. Probably not something they're going to do, but that's a spot people are going to want to go to. Pittsburgh is another one. I think that Matthew Stafford in Pittsburgh would make a ton of sense. Again, when you look at the caliber of quarterbacks in the division, but is that a place that Matthew Stafford and his family want to go? It's not exactly New York or Vegas when you're coming from L.A. from just a environment perspective. So I think I'm missing one or two more. I mean, Indianapolis has to figure out how they're going to put together that room this year with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, he can't be.
But
there
it's
with
not.
like a top 10 pick.
You're not bringing in Matthew Stafford in that situation. So I think I'm missing somebody else. But basically, those are the teams, and you can pretty quickly kind of whittle away a bunch of those teams as like what the real possibilities are.
It's fascinating. I personally, I'm not putting words in your mouth, think the hay's a little out of the barn here, and I do think something's going to happen. I hope it happens this week, just for content's sake. We're going to have on a new general manager to the NFL. Since we've last taped NFL Daily, a man named James Gladstone became the general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I bring his name up like that because he's not someone that many people outside the league would possibly know who he is. Frankly, he's not a guy who people inside the league know that well. I talked to a couple teams, and they were like, they hired who? He was an assistant with the Rams. His title was the Director of Scouting Strategy, kind of a right-hand man of Les Snead, but in a creative, sort of more less formal role with the Rams than maybe like a director of college scouting or pro personnel or anything like that, which is often the guys who get to GM. So he's joining us on NFL Daily on Tuesday. We're talking to 3 GMs. I'm excited about that. I just wanted your thoughts on that. He spoke kind of a non-traditional, very young hire for the Jaguars.
It is. It's somebody that Liam Cohen has a familiarity with from their days with the Rams, and obviously he was impressed by him. I saw Liam said some stuff about watching him navigate undrafted free agency and some of the things that he did in that area. He does have a football background. This is not a pure quantitative hire. He was a high school football coach. So, like,
he was literally Les Snead's son's
football
high
coach.
School football coach.
Correct.
Back in St. Louis.
This is like the closest thing I would say is this is almost like a baseball or basketball hire where you get somebody who is purely from an analytic background. Although, again, he does have some football. That's why I even bring it up. Is like, it's not as if he came from, video games and now is the GM of the Jaguars. And so there's some of that Tony Khan, I'm sure, appreciates, given what his background is and his role within the organization. He's got another really smart dude that he can work with, and obviously there's a trust factor there with Liam. But you're right, and this is nothing against James Gladstone, who I don't know personally. I got his number, sent him a text after he got the job, like, "Hi, good to meet you." But he's definitely not a known commodity within the league. And so, like with any of these things, it's like you got to get the right staff around him. You got to get the right scouts in place. I would also remind people of this. Shad Khan never wanted to fire Trent Baalke. Shad Khan thinks Trent Baalke built a really good roster. Shad Khan thinks Trent Baalke built a really good football operation in the systems. So now with a guy who comes from a very different background into this environment, does he have the power to say what a lot of quantitative people would, which is we should probably, to get this thing right for the long haul, trade some of the highly paid guys who have significant value? Or do you come in and go, well, we're not going to rock the boat because we've got to win. That's the mandate here from ownership, that we got a team that can win now. And I don't have the answer for that. I just think it's a fascinating sub-storyline. This is a guy who's never done a trade, presumably. I'm sure he's consulted on trades. He's never done a trade. He's never picked a player. There's a lot of GMs who come in who have varying levels of experience in that, but his background is going to be a little bit different. And so who are the people in the organization he leans on?
Well, I'll check out his vibe on Tuesday. We also have Ryan Poles, by the way. Check out our show on Tuesday, coming on, the general manager of the Bears, and the new Raiders GM, John Spytek. And yeah, I mean, I kind of just look at the salary structure. That tells you a lot. Liam Cohen is one of the highest paid new coaches ever, and one of the higher paid coaches in the league, period. And so he's got a lot of juice. Yeah. I doubt James Gladstone
a lot for a first time.
It's ultimately kind of like a coach centric situation. You also have Tony Baselli, who helped with the hiring, who was part of the press conference. Some news that also went down, and we'll get to the 101 shortly. Brandon Staley was hired as the Saints defensive coordinator. We talked about that potential hire coming up. Cuts have started around the NFL, just kind of mentioning this time of year has started to happen. So the Bears cut DeMarcus Walker, Gerald Everett, some other cuts, the Bengals, Sheldon Rankins, Juan Thornhill. Shaq Thompson of the Panthers was made aware that they're not going to re-sign him in free agency. That was a little weird.
I mean, they're trying to give him like the nice send-off, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. We need to. They got to do what they want to do, and
it was just like, former first don't be pick. Mad at us. We're not going to re-sign him.
Free agent about to hit free agency. We'd run out of time if we hit all those. But
yes.
Shaq Thompson, great guy. I was there the night he was drafted. I was in the green room.
A great Carolina Panther over the last handful of years. But I did want to hit, before we get to the 101, some of the early news coming out of Indianapolis. The Rules Committee has met. They are talking about potentially doing a 4th and 15 or 4th and 20 situation instead of an onside kick. There was a report that banning the tush push has been brought off. Some speculation.
That's a team proposal.
Yes.
Usually the team proposals, unless they are co-opted by the competition committee, don't get through. We'll see. I mean, it's been an ongoing thing. Like, you watch it, is that a football player or is it rugby? I think there's an intellectual discussion, but of course everyone's just going to go, oh, you can't stop. Now they won the Super Bowl.
Well,
now
yes.
you're going to take away
it's funny, though, because
their greatest weapon.
They didn't say who. It was an unnamed owner, but one of the owners on the committee is Mark Murphy, an acting owner, and he has said publicly many times in like fans Q&A, he's said it outright that he wants it, banned. So it sounds like it's probably Mark Murphy.
And with regard to the 4th and 15 or 4th and 20
yeah,
alternative,
do you think that could actually happen?
That's been proposed. The Eagles have been proposing that for like 5 years. Every year it's on the docket. It's never, I don't believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it's ever gone to a vote. It's been brought up. It has gotten onto the list that they talk about in March when these things are voted upon. The issue with it is just like, is it gimmicky? For me, I am simultaneously a traditionalist and a capitalist. The traditionalist in me says the onside kick, like it's a weird play, but it's like a uniquely football play. I wish the percentages were higher, but like I don't want to totally replace that. On the other hand, the capitalist in me goes, shouldn't we have like the best players on every team deciding the biggest moment and not not Nick Folk?
Right, and
nothing against Nick Folk. I'm just saying
the idea would be instead of going for an onside kick, you would get to attempt a 4th and 15
play.
or
Make it take it,
or 4th and 20.
Right.
I think try it at 4th and 20 for a year, see how it goes. The NFL evolved as it turned to the league that we know now by trying out different things like this. So I like it. They are also, and this I think is more likely to happen in the long run, conversation about either moving a touchback up to the 35-yard line to encourage more kickoff returns, or just move the kickoff back 5 yards from where the kicker kicks it, which would also potentially have more returns. So we will see if any of those things happen. Before I get off the combine, though, no Shedeur Sanders doing workouts, no Ashton Genty. You follow this stuff so closely. I'm just curious, since you're on the show here and we're in Indianapolis, like are there any guys that you're looking for? Are there any like on-field combine type of stories that are front of mind for you this week as like an insider?
Well, the first thing I would say is we always talk a lot about the guys who aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
It's like a very, very small number. It's like a dozen of the top guys won't work out. There's like 370-something prospects here.
I mentioned those two names because they are about as familiar as any
absolutely.
in the
and they're
world.
going to do stuff at their pro day. Cam Ward, as of now, is undecided. From what I was told, I talked to his quarterbacks coach a short time ago. He's figuring out if he wants to do it. I'm sure we'd all love to see Cam Ward. The rest of the quarterbacks, Jackson Dart is going to throw. Jalen Milroe is going to throw. You'll see all those guys. Guys I'm looking forward to seeing in the drills. I mean, I think that the quarterbacks, because QB3, or in some people's minds, can you even vault up and be QB2, QB1 in this draft, whatever it is, that next group of quarterbacks is really interesting to me. We saw a lot of them at the Senior Bowl. Milroe and Dart and those guys, Riley Leonard, were all there. But there's some guys we haven't. We haven't seen Quinn Ewers on the field.
Tyler Shuck, people, a lot of buzz, first round buzz.
Tyler Shuck. I mean, when Tyler Shuck isn't, I said something to him at the Senior Bowl about like, you've dealt with a bunch of major injuries. Like, well, not major injuries, just broken bones and stuff. I'm like, that's a major injury to me.
Yeah.
Missed a lot of time, but like he looks good on the field. I think that's a really good storyline. I think that the entire wide receiver group, because it's regarded as a down year. By the way, I just got a text. It was Green Bay that proposed that.
Okay,
it was
is confirmed.
Yes, confirmed. The wide receiver group, there's not those top end guys. You're not going to see the really, really, top 5, top 10 type guys. But that also creates some variance where, let's say, to give you a name, Matthew Golden from Texas.
Yeah.
Does he come out here and light it up, and all of a sudden we're talking about him as being first, second wide receiver off the board? Like, that's entirely possible. And then I'm also just, it's always about who the physical freaks are going to be that test off the charts.
Right. Who are some you think?
Shamar Stewart, the Texas A&M edge. He was also another Senior Bowl guy. I stood next to him. Like, he is built like Jadeveon Clowney. If you can just envision what he looks like. I've been told, based on what he's doing in terms of his combine training, like he's testing like he might test like Trayvon Walker. He's a little bit taller than Trayvon Walker, who went number 1 overall ahead of Aiden Hutchinson in the draft not that long ago, based largely on the testing numbers. I think that he's definitely one to watch. And then I'll give you a 40-yard blazer. Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky, super engaging, bright dude that I've talked to. Can really play, but he's also like, he's legit fast, and it's going to be interesting to see what he runs.
Yeah, no one expected Xavier Worthy to go first round at this time last year.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten too deep into the prospect, but Shamar Stewart's really interesting. I like hearing how different evaluators talk about him. Daniel Jeremiah, I know he put it as top 50. Check that out today in terms of prospects. Shamar Stewart is 28th. Like, he's a guy who's going to get compared to Trayvon Walker. because of the low sack total, and he's just a physical freak. But there are people that say, like, this guy really doesn't know how to play football very well yet, which I don't think they were saying about Trayvon Walker. Like, he is someone that is the ultimate, like, it's going to be a test of, do you draft a guy just off of measurements or not? Like, he could go anywhere from the top 10 to the second round. And there are people that will say, like, man, maybe it'll happen, but he, like, doesn't really know how to play yet. But we'll see.
It kind of reminds me of, now, Will McDonald was in a category of his own, like the dude who would jump over cars from Iowa State. And it was like, is he a 1? Is he like he'd go in the second, and he went, like, to the Jets at, 18th overall or something? It was like 13th overall. He went very high in that draft. Like, that might be the type of guy you get with Shamar Stewart.
And Will McDonald's gotten better as we go. Okay, enough preamble here. Let's get to the top 101 free agents of 2025. I wish I could still mess around and just keep changing the rankings. I am someone that understands this is a fun exercise. It's just opinion, and it changed so much on a daily basis that it would continue to change if I was allowed to keep changing it. But now it's locked in. My editors say I cannot change it. Here are the top 10 free agents. I'm not going to go through all 101, of course, but I will do the top 10. The top 10, T. Higgins, who we think is going to get franchise tagged.
Will not get to free agency bar in a surprise.
Yeah.
But yes, clearly
Never
the top
know.
receiver.
He could get traded. Trey Smith, I've already gotten some pushback on this, number 2. Milton Williams, 3, who had a great playoff run with the Eagles. A lot of Eagles up top. Ronnie Stanley, 4. Zach Bond coming off a career year at number 5. Sam Darnold at 6. Osa Odigizua at number 7. Josh Sweat from the Eagles at 8. Chris Godwin at 9, and Carlton Davis starts off a run of cornerbacks. Charvarius Ward and DJ Reed are the next 2 guys on my list in the top 12.
There's a bunch of top corners. I think that I looked at the list. I think that, in general terms, like you're on it here. Trey Smith will be interesting because if the Chiefs don't franchise tag him, does that kind of signal then are they not as fired up about him as other teams might be looking at him? I mean, there's not a lot of guards.
There's not a lot of offensive linemen. There's not a lot of offensive players.
Which you have Ronnie Stanley with his injury history in the top 5 on the list. He was healthy this year, but he had missed a ton of time over the previous 2 or 3 seasons. But I'm with you. I mean, it would not be a surprise if he ends up being the top paid tackle. Zach Martin's retirement took another option where Zach Martin wanted to play. Somebody would have given him $15 million to come in.
Yep.
I think that one of the interesting things, and this probably speaks to the perception within the league about the quality of the free agent class. Those names, those are your top 10 free agents here.
It's not as star-studded.
But also think how few franchise tags are even possible off that list. I mean, T is going to get it if they can't work out a deal, which we'll see how that plays out, but it seems like the tag is coming for him. Trey Smith, maybe. It's at least a possibility that the Chiefs could potentially explore. Sam Darnold, you can't rule out him getting tagged at this point.
Yeah.
That could be a tag to sign. That could be a tag and trade. That could be tag and an hour later he's in the parking lot signing it to make sure he locks in his $40 million for this year.
That's a good idea.
There's
Sam Darnold.
A lot of different ways that this thing could go. And then Osa Odigizua, I think you would at least make the case that maybe you could franchise tag him, but with the Cowboys and their current financial situation, cap-wise, I don't really see that happening. So I think that the 2 defensive tackles that get paid are the 2 guys you got up there, Odigizua and Milton Williams.
Okay.
We've seen crazy defensive tackle numbers. If both those guys got 20-plus a year, I wouldn't be shocked.
Oh, yeah. I'm expecting it for Milton Williams. I'm not sure what the market is for Odigizua, but he's a good player who has gotten better and better, and that's what you want. The defensive tackles tend to grow up slowly. So I sent this list out. I immediately got some reaction. There are some people that don't think Trey Smith is maybe as good as his reputation or is maybe not coming off his best year, that teams kind of targeted him, did not have a great Super Bowl. Teams kind of targeted him a little bit when Tooney was at left tackle. We'll see. I would be shocked if he didn't get big money from someone, but maybe it's not. It's from the Chiefs. He was a freaking All-Pro, and he's young, and he's played
Position scarcity drives so much of this. And, I mean, look, I don't know where your next guard is, but there's not.
It's pretty rough. Will Fries, I heard some people are pretty big on. I mean, this is a guy who a late-round pick who didn't play that much until 2023.
He'll do solid. It's not going to be
improved. He's the next one, and then it's Tevin Jenkins who played
and the
a lot.
other interior guy is Drew Dahlman, who I agree that's probably going to be the top paid center. And all this is pending, obviously, other guys who get cut, and of course you add them and update this list regularly.
Yes.
Which is very helpful to those of us who sometimes lose track of things amidst the free agency frenzy.
Yes.
I mean, I think if you're just going down, position by position, Darnold is clearly the one quarterback that's going to get paid. Does that number begin with a 3? Does that number begin with a 4? Those are the things that remain to be seen, and obviously the tag situation hovers over that.
It's got to start with a 4 if he's getting tagged, because then that means they either would play it or at least find a team that was willing to do like 2 for $70 but guarantee 40, 50 of it, whatever,
right.
Something like that.
There's no running backs that are going to get paid huge money. Najee Harris will get a good solid deal because he's a known commodity running back.
I like Aaron Jones, so I ranked him a little ahead, but that's like a 1-year deal type of guy that I think is just going to help out your team.
He's 30 years old, and you probably need to ease off the carries. He got 1 for 7 last year, I think. Probably around that same.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins is out there. Kenneth Gainwell is at the end of my list. Ty Johnson, like these are the types of guys that make it to free agency. Okay, you mentioned the quarterback, so let's talk about the other quarterbacks quickly. Then, Justin Fields. I still think Justin Fields can offer something and was an improved player last year. So because of the quarterback tax, he was my second quarterback, and I put him in the top 25 because I just think that position is that important. Then I went with Russell Wilson. He was around the middle of the 50s. Jameis Winston. I think a high-quality backup is worth more than they're getting on the open market, so that's why I still rank them pretty high. Jacoby Brissett. You get into Daniel Jones, and Jimmy G is in the mix of guys. There any of those names stand out to you as maybe we'll get a better deal than people think, or at least have a starter's market? I kind of viewed all those guys as backups, but Fields at least has a little bit more of a upside to him.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, and this is why I think the biggest story in the NFL over the next, let's call it 3 weeks, is going to be trades. Because in the draft, let's start there since we are here in Indianapolis at the Combine, how many of those guys do you feel confident are going to start right away? You maybe can make an argument to yourself that Cam Ward, Shador, and if there's somebody else down the line, Quinn Ewers has played a ton of football. But maybe all these, there's not even a surefire. There's not a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May type where you feel like even Drake needed some time.
Although, hot take, I think the longer we get in this process, people are going to be like, you know what, Cam Ward's a pretty great quarterback prospect.
So you're going to
I think he's
people
it.
Probably
I think he's
probably
it.
come around
Yes.
on it. So let's say you get 1 or 2 starters out of the rookie class. Now you're into the free agent class where Sam Darnold will be starting somewhere.
Stafford certainly
in
will
2025.
as a possible trade, yes.
Right. But like of the other guys you're mentioning on your free agent list, Russ, depending where he is, I don't think that he signs anywhere if he's not the starter. So I think Russ starts somewhere. I think Fields is at minimum in a competition type of situation.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I don't know that there is anybody else who you're saying that guy's going to step in and become an instant starter. So now let's think about some of the guys.
Maybe Jimmy G in Los Angeles or
very specific
Maybe.
contextual situations.
Yes.
Right. So now let's get into the veteran quarterbacks who currently are under contract that we don't know how this is going to end.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers technically still under contract, but is going to become a free agent.
I want to ask you.
You got him on there?
Put on your 101. No, because I just decided
he's
technically on the team. Maybe they could find a trade for him so he doesn't make the 101.
Right.
Where would you put Aaron Rodgers on this list? Just for the listeners, if you keep going in the top 20, Byron Murphy. Again, a lot of good cornerbacks. Dre Greenlaw, Javon Holland, Nick Bolton, Will Fries, Reddick. I get to my second quarterback there at Fields. I would put Rodgers, I think, ahead of Fields. But maybe
it's
not.
It's hard, though. I mean,
there's some pretty good defensive starters that are available all the way through 30. If you were making this list, where do you put him?
I have a great deal of respect for Aaron Rodgers, who I covered early in his career. He's won 4 NFL MVPs. He's the best practice player I've ever seen.
Interesting.
Just the way that he can manipulate his body angles, like the arm snap and put the ball anywhere. I mean, he is a rare dude. The guy I saw for large chunks last season was not Aaron Rodgers. Is that being 41 years old? Is that coming off a torn Achilles? Is that the general dysfunction that emerged after the firing of Robert Saleh? Well, I'd say the last game that he played with Saleh as the head coach was the worst I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers play. Just missing wide open dude after wide open dude. So all the other stuff that comes with Aaron, and is he doing publicity tours on McAfee and documentaries and everything, like all that's a real thing, and teams have talked to me about it. Do you want to bring all that in? But it's also just about, Are you going in on this guy and you're going to get the version who for half the season last year, not only wasn't the reason they were winning, but he was a big reason they were losing? I don't know. It's hard to put him in a ranking. He's somewhere in the top 101.
It is.
Who's number 101, Greg? We got?
It's Nick Chubb. I'm glad you mentioned that. This is a big reveal every year. 101 is unique because as the players come on and off the list.
Mm-hmm. You had Deontay Johnson at 100?
I did.
It's not a touchscreen. Sorry, I got a fingerprint on your laptop.
I just thought, as crazy a season as he has, no one had a worse contract year than Deontay Johnson. I just feel like, I don't know, the talent's too good. It's so hard to find a wide receiver. I want to stick him in. But 101 is the one.
Aaron's closer in my mind. I'll say this, and don't put this. Don't let the aggregate. All right, do I want to get aggregated? All right, I would put Aaron closer to 101 than 1.
That's fair. I don't think it's crazy to say that if you're just looking at all things considered,
how many quarterbacks do you have?
Too.
Yeah.
Let's say Jimmy G is maybe my last one that made the list. He's somewhere in the 80s or something like that, 70s. I can't.
All right, Aaron. All right, then Aaron, if you're weighing it out in terms of like position value, then he's probably somewhere around the Jimmy G territory, which would have sounded like blasphemy 3 years ago, but now it's the reality that, dude, if you go back through the course of time, I know you're a great football historian, look at the Hall of Fame up to, say, 20 years ago. You go through every player through like the early 2000s, every Hall of Fame quarterback. They all retired at age 37 or 38. They all, every single one, not like around there or below that, like right at 37, 38. Like that was the cutoff.
There's literally only one quarterback now as old as Aaron Rodgers that's ever produced well, and it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
And the only one that even got a little close was Warren Moon and Drew Brees got to that like 40-41 season. And that's it. And they didn't
Favre at 39 had a great season
they didn't get
in Minnesota.
Past that, and that's where Rodgers
Warren Moon played into his early 40s. And then Tom rewrote everything and made it hard on all these guys. Like, dudes didn't play this long. And when his great skill was always getting inside and outside the pocket and making things happen on the run, you see whether he either can't do it or doesn't think he should do it. That part's not there anymore. So then again, just to wrap that, like the quarterbacks, think of the number of guys we got that are available. Rodgers, fluid with Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Fluid with Matthew Stafford. Fluid with Derek Carr.
Yes.
So that's 4 more names that everybody's sitting there going, are they going to be cut? Are they going to get traded? Like, what's going to happen?
Good point. Going to push all these guys down.
So it's just, my point is, like, if you're sitting there, like, to me, again, that's the biggest storyline over the next 3 weeks is all these guys are available, and it's going to be chaotic because teams are going to look at free agency and the draft and go, we just need to go get this guy to get us through the year.
This is all really good stuff. I want to get to a little more on the 101, but before I do, does that mean Derek Carr is available, you think?
He's got a $10 million fully guaranteed bonus on, I think it's the third or fifth day of the league year. Fifth day of the league year. And he's got another $30 million that fully vests if he's on the roster the third day of the league year. So they're going to have to do something. If he's going to be a Saint, they're going to have to address his contract. I know Kellen Moore and Derek have met, and they've talked about next season and all those things, but they're going to have to come to a contractual agreement. Does that, kind of like Stafford, a different category, but does that work out in New Orleans? Is it ultimately, hey, we're better off with him going someplace else? Like, I would say it's fluid. There has to be a resolution, and there's no resolution right now.
And when I hear fluid, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because you are a responsible reporter, and I'm not. I'm just, hosting a show here and offering analysis.
You've been doing it a long time. You're still getting away with it.
I don't mean it. It's not irresponsible, but when I hear fluid and I hear them considering moving him, it's almost like the quote on retirement. Once you're thinking about it, you're already almost there. When I hear that, I think, okay, there's a decent chance all those guys I think are going to be playing.
Like how many late
elsewhere.
career quarterbacks took like substantial pay cuts?
Right.
Brady was on a year-to-year thing, and you can argue he always took deals that were friendly because he wanted them to continue to put together the roster. Ben Roethlisberger took a huge pay cut at the end of his career.
It's a different situation.
But he has, he's not Brady in New England. He's not Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. He's Derek Carr, who got there a couple of years ago. And the only game that I saw he played there, he got booed every time he came on the field, and they cheered when Taysom replaced him.
Fair.
So, like, there's not a lot of history there. Derek's a great guy, and, if he wants to play this season, I would anticipate that he's going to have options to do that.
Yeah,
I just can't
so
sit
too.
here and tell you, is it going to be in New Orleans?
Couple things. I thought the defense actually was pretty deep on this list. If you need a 3-down linebacker, and I feel like a lot of teams do, a lot of good players. I have Zach Bond, I mentioned, at 5. Nick Bolton's at 18. Ernest Jones, who was on 3 rosters last year, but kind of turned the Seahawks season around, put him in the top 30. Jamian Sherwood was a guy who I heard from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh, you have him too low. I put him in the top 35 in the end. Maybe I should have put him even higher. Dre Greenlaw is in my top 20, a difference maker. Another guy some people have a lot of support for. Kaiser White is in my top 100. Tyrell Dodson, who was with the Dolphins. So I actually think there could be like a little bit of a trend where 3-down linebackers start getting value. They start bouncing back a little bit like running backs did. Because I feel like we've now gotten to the point where the analytics or whatever the conventional wisdom from teams is don't pay these linebackers. It's now gotten so low that actually it's like, oh, wait, these are the guys getting picked on in our biggest games. We could have some, and that's why there's actually a decent amount of them that made it.
Well, what happened with the linebackers was that used to be a depreciated position, and then you remember
still is if all these guys are
this
making
is going
it.
back like 7 years though, and the Jets did that. Maybe it wasn't 7, like 5. Mike McCagnon was the GM. They basically gave 50% more than the top of the market to C.J. Mosley to convince him to come to the Jets and gave him $17 million a year. Like the top of the market at that point was like 12. And then so all of a sudden everybody like Bobby Wagner and all these guys were like, I want that. So then all of a sudden you had all these deals that got done at $17, $18 million. And then there was kind of this course correction back down. I agree. I mean, Zach Bond will be fascinating because last year that was one of the greatest values in the entire league, a 1-year, $5 million deal. Can Howie get that done to bring him back? He was a pretty big part of that defense.
You got to do it. I think he's the number one guy.
Him and Bolton are clearly the two that everybody's going to be watching and hoping that they bring that back up to the top of the market. Because, again, it wasn't that long ago that if you were a free agent linebacker, you were sitting there going, those guys are getting 17,
because
18
of teams
million.
like
I
the
want
Eagles
that.
who cycled through every year. And yet, I think if I was making a list of all these Eagles free agents, I think he's the one that they have to just break the bank. I think they wish they had re-signed Milton Williams earlier. It's a rare thing that maybe Howie would want back. You can't re-sign everyone. Cornerback I mentioned is pretty deep. I mentioned those 3 at the top: Carlton Davis, DJ Reed, Charvarius,
Byron Murphy
Ward.
too.
Byron Murphy
had
is
a
in
really
my top
good year.
15 actually. I moved him up with some, and then guys I already wish I had a little higher. I heard from multiple people. Trevon Moehrig. He's at 22,
he had a really good year.
The safety for the Raiders. Shout out to Mike Mayock, a Mayock pick.
That's right.
And actually, I heard from more than one person now. It's like, even that's way too low. He should be maybe in your top 10. Like, he is a ascending, really good young starter.
I mean, is Javon Hall in your top safety?
He is just ahead of Moehrig. And I got some people saying they would rather have Moehrig. I think there'd probably be reasonable disagreement.
He had a really good year. And then there's a bunch of other guys who came off good years. I mean, Cam Bynum.
Yes, he's in my top 50.
Is another one who I think is going to do well. Guys like Jeremy Chin that kind of get forgotten. He's going to be, certainly in the mix. It's just a matter of he's a very specific. He's like a Swiss Army knife. So it's like, what's the scheme fit for him? Yeah, there's some safeties. There's a bunch of corners. To your point, there's a couple of linebackers, there's a couple of defensive tackles, and then the edge market's also going to be. That's one name. Where do you have Dio Adenabo?
He is in my top 40 or so.
He might be one of those ones that surprises you.
That makes even more than you expect. He was someone I had
I put out that list
higher
next week.
initially. I know. I kind of.
Well, there's not a lot.
He's 38 on my list.
There's a bunch of. I know you got like Khalil Mack in your top 25. Like there's a bunch of the older guys. Like Chase Young's a free agent once again, and
Calais Campbell. But here's the thing. I don't mind putting some of those guys higher because I do note year after year that those guys end up being great values. Calais Campbell's been a fantastic value year after year. You're getting a high-quality starter for like $10 million.
If it's
so
Khalil
mine
Mack,
is not a prediction of like who makes the most money necessarily. It's who is going to be good.
But in terms of those young edge rushers, because people are proactive doing deals, the top ones get tagged. This year there isn't anybody who's really in the tag category. Dio Adenabo might be the highest paid edge rusher in this entire group, and I would bet. I mean, you got a very astute audience here.
You're killing me. That's why I want to. Now I got to put him in the top 25. It's too late. Deshaun Wharton was the other one from the Chiefs that just. I think he's going to get paid a lot. A lot of people are watching Chiefs film during the playoffs, and he is a good.
Where'd you have Godwin?
I put him in the top 10 just out of respect.
I think
just love me some Chris Godwin.
Well, also
number 9.
If and when T gets tagged, like who else are you paying up there Darius Slayton should do well.
Let's
I think
go
he'll
over
do
quickly.
well.
I know you got to go. I don't want to push you too hard here and take advantage of your time. You got to go do more live TV. What a schedule that Pelissero has.
He's still
They have
grounded,
him
by the
on
way.
from like 7 or 8 in the morning on Good Morning Football, and then he's got to take off the suit, put it back on like 8 hours later,
Right.
and the shirt's not
And the
as fresh
shirt's
as
kind
it
of
used to
wrinkled.
be.
You know the
Yeah.
part down at the bottom that's just like completely wrinkled when you take it out of your pants at the end of the day? I get to put that back in the pants.
That's weird. Okay. The wide receiver market, I have Amari Cooper at 13. Darius Slayton and Marquise Brown at 42 and 43. De'Ami Brown, who had a good playoff run, at 50.
Yeah,
Stephon
that's a
Diggs
sneaky
is
one.
at 30. I thought he was settling into a nice role. I know he's an older player, but just out of respect. Mike Williams is an interesting guy to me. I think a lot of teams have written him off. I do wonder, a year more removed from a torn ACL, I had to give him some respect and put him in the top
No, I agree.
75.
I mean, Mike Williams, when he's on, he's always been a streaky player, as everybody who's in fantasy knows, including me. I'm like a long-term Mike Williams owner, and it's like you will get stretches where he's unbelievable, and then there's games where he disappears. But like, just watch him live. There's very few of those big-bodied, vertical speed threat guys. He's one of them, and you're right. I mean, another year coming off of a very serious injury.
Right, he'll
he
be
should
more
that much
explosive.
better.
It's not shocking to me. He took a little bit. He never had.
But
this
Diggs will be coming right back from his ACL as an older player. Those guys, they tend to get like the 1 year incentive laden types of deals. You know, Godwin's coming off an injury too, and he's got a prior ACL. He's always on the injury report with the knee. My belief is still somebody's going to pay him just because they're going to look at the alternatives and say this is clearly the best guy out there.
Yeah, at the end of the list, it's not deep. Elijah Moore, it hurt me, but DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen are towards the back of the 101.
I think that's
two great players, but not at their best right now. It was a red flag for me that Hopkins could not produce with Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to have a better situation.
Well,
than
Hop just kind of runs his own route tree, and I
Right.
think that takes time for the quarterback to get on the same page. Keenan Allen, new place, didn't work out how anybody wanted to in Chicago. He's a competitor. He's 35, I think. He's older now.
Yeah.
But you know, another guy who he's got a place in the league here. It's just a matter of like
33. Don't try to
33. Okay.
Don't try to age this guy.
All right.
And yes, Nick Chubb at 29 is my 101. I didn't finish my thought earlier, but yes, 101 stays there forever.
101,
It's a
Nick Chubb.
It's a position of respect because I know he's coming off these serious injuries, but this is a Hall of Fame talent, Hall of Fame person. So you want to bet on the person. I thought he would represent 101 well.
Be interested to see the Browns try to get something done. They did the deal with him last year, knowing he was going to miss most of the season. Do you take one more run? Does he want to go someplace else? It's not going to be a ton of money. He's a bad dude, though. You know, when he's out there, if he can capture some of what he was, look out.
He is. Also a bad dude, Tom Pelissero. He's made nice with Ian Rappaport. These two guys, they're dominating the insider game. I will say it right now. For Tom Pelissero, appreciate the time.
You got it, man.
We will be back on Tuesday. Like I mentioned, we're going to have some general manager interviews. Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic will also join me on the show. And yes, it will be coming out earlier in the days. We'll just send it once we get all the news. Because look, it's not that just the GMs we're talking to. The coaches, the GMs for every single team are going to be at these podiums over the next couple of days. A lot of news coming out of that. Until then, yeah, look, when we're back in Indianapolis, it almost feels like football is back, but no, it's still the regular season for now. See you Tuesday.